Eytan, Bensoussan. First, some supporters to thank, and thank you for listening. This episode is supported by CCW Digital, leaders responsible for operations, information technology, contact centers, customer care, service, and support are invited to register for a free CCW Digital membership. Membership includes networking with 100,000 plus qualified industry professionals, quarterly executive research reports, product matchmaking, and more. Go to ccwdigital.com to join the community. This episode is also supported by the CCW Conference and Expo. The event will empower you to test, learn, and try the next big thing in customer experience optimization. Are you interested in mining data across touch points for personalized and predictive data? Are you trying to integrate your systems to get a more complete view of the customer? Are you figuring out what innovations to invest in? Chatbots, virtual assistants, AI, VR, biometrics, to name a few? Go to callcenterweek.com to register. Eytan Bensoussan joins us and shares his thoughts on customer experience from a fintech perspective. His thoughts are, if you're creating a new option, the role of the bank should be different, and so, in servicing small business owners, Eytan's point of view is the role of the bank should be a first line of defense against the burdens of financial management. Accounting, expense management, cash flow insights are either done on the side or are extremely expensive to have done. He set up shop to absorb data and repurpose it for the client. And so, he's disrupting an industry, he's disrupting technology, he's disrupting customer service and customer experience in the name of the customer. He has set up a financial institution where the product is customer experience. Welcome to CCW Digital on B2B IQ. I'm your host, Seth Adler. Download episodes on ccwdigital.com or through our app in iTunes, within the iTunes podcast app in Google Play or wherever you currently get your podcasts. Eytan Bensoussan.
I mean, listen, to be honest, beggars can't be choosers. I'll respond to anything that's in the ballpark of my name because no one ever gets it right.
You are from Montreal. You are Quebecois. Is that fair to say?
I am. I'm born in Quebec.
So we're here at C2 Montreal. We ran into each other. You told me what you did, and I said, well, we got to talk, right? So for the folks, just share exactly what, the elevator pitch so that folks understand what conversation we're getting ourselves into.
Right. So First Digital is at the heart of what we call the fintech movement that we're hearing about all over the place. And what we're trying to do is create a new business banking alternative for small businesses and startups.
Right.
And the goal is that in 2017, if you're going to create something new like that, why would you do it? Why bother? I mean, we have many banks as it is. Why do we need something else for small businesses? And it's because of how we see the role of the bank. 100 years ago, our banks lent money, which paved the way for the country. They lent money for the railroads and so on and so forth.
Certainly.
But that model hasn't changed. In 2017, if you were to think about what's the reason for a bank? Well, lending and deposits, that's commodities. That's table stakes. Everybody's got to have that. And it's commoditized. You don't care who your loan is from as long as you've got the capital.
Sure. I mean, I'm interested in the rate. And
well, the rate, right? Those are all, those are all kind of structural.
Yes.
The brand of the loan is far less important
Certainly.
than the quality of the rate and the money.
I'd like a trusted name.
Right.
If it says Chase, I will believe it.
Correct.
Whether,
But if it's B of A, if it's Chase, if it's Umpaqua, whatever it is, they're all in the same range, and you'll take it.
Absolutely.
So for
There's
us,
very little differentiation between them
on those products.
To your point.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So for us, if you're going to create a new option for business banking in 2017, it's because the role of the bank should be different. For us, the role of the bank should actually be the first layer or the first line of defense against the burdens of financial management for small business owners.
Okay.
So the idea being that there is a natural place where all financial management should happen, and that can be at the bank level. That's where all your data sits. That's where the first time it gets processed. So all the things that the small business owner carries on their back, like accounting, expense management, cash flow insights, any sorts of reporting, so on and so forth, that's something that they're doing on their high time where they're paying someone tens of thousands of dollars a year to do it for them.
Certainly.
The problem hasn't gone away. It's just paid for.
Indeed.
Our assertion is that you can actually get a lot of that done by your bank relatively effortlessly. because you're building technology in a world where you know the value of data. You're actually absorbing that data to repurpose it for the client in a way that actually helps them better manage their business.
So you're giving me that information. I don't have to go find it.
Exactly. So, and just as a caveat, right? So we are not a bank. We're not a Schedule I bank. That's very, it's an important distinction, especially in Canada. Regulatory, you got to make sure. What we're doing is working with a deposit-taking institution behind the scenes so that they are the regulated, compliant custodian of all the assets of anybody we might do business with.
So you're almost the bridge between the customer and that institution?
Right. So we're taking what is otherwise a commoditized product, and we're saying there is a whole other world that this could be doing for the client. We're going to build that world, and we're going to make sure that it is compliant, that it is safe and insured by the government.
Okay. Which puts us into my first question to you before you told me any of that. Was, okay, so it's got to be blockchain, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So now why am I so excited about blockchain, and why don't I need to be?
I mean, I think you should still be excited about it, right? There's a lot of reasons why it's really interesting, and it's a true 0 to 1 kind of breakthrough that we've seen in the last decade or so. But for the particular thing that we're building, it's something that we're mindful of. We have understandings of where it may play a role, but it does not play a role in what we're building. I'll tell you why.
There you go.
Some of the benefits you get by using things built on the blockchain are, a distributed ledger, right? So there's not one source of failure, but it's spread around everywhere. There's no way to remove the data. You have things like completely anonymous transactions, records, etc.
Anonymized transactions.
Anonymized, exactly.
Right.
Now, those are all important pieces, but for what we're building, we don't need the distribution. There are other ways to get the same results. Safekeeping. You can copy your data in many different server stacks to back it up. You can have proper, compliance trails of record to show where the assets sit and with whom. That's not for us what we need. We're also dealing with real-time processing. The blockchain actually is a slow mechanism. It takes about 10 minutes to process the next block on the chain.
So no one really talks about that because it's all about security. It is all about, we kind of all know that the transaction happened, although it is anonymized.
Right.
But no one talks about speed.
Right. And that's because, and so the blockchain in many ways, and there are people who are far more sophisticated at this than I am.
Sure.
But it is very much a technology looking for good use cases. And I think there are a lot of good ones that are in development, but to the point where I need to build for 6 months from now, a year, 2 years max. I mean, if I look past that, I'm not doing my job. At least at this stage in our life as an early stage startup.
Understood.
The blockchain is on the horizon, and we're waiting to see the case that pops, and we're ready for it, rather than actually building it into some of the important back end.
Yeah.
The other thing I would note is that we're in the business of building trust. And
just like any bank.
Yeah.
But you're not a bank, though.
Exactly. We're not.
Wait, so what are you called if you're not called a bank?
We are a financial service technology company.
Fair enough.
But more importantly, we're a client company. We are a client-focused company, and everything else, the financial services, the technology, it's a way to make the client's life better, faster, cheaper, whatever it is.
You could argue you're a customer experience company.
Right.
That's what you do, right? So how did you? I know I'm going to interrupt you here, and we'll come
problem.
back to it, I'm sure. But how does this guy, I'm sure you were a banker, an investment banker, right? No. You were a management consultant, Eytan.
Yeah. So I spent about five phenomenal years with McKinsey & Company, a management consultancy, spending a lot of my time working in the financial services space on all things digital customer experience and financial inclusion. So
the reason I say you weren't a banker, you weren't an investment banker, because that person on the front lines, let's say, has a different outcome that they're looking for than the management consultant who you were. So when you were kind of coming into these financial institutions and doing what you doing what you did, what were the things that you realized? In other words, I'm looking for the big picture takeaways from your entire time at McKinsey in financial services.
So first, I think I was fortunate in that I was at a particular part of McKinsey that was co-opting this trend of fintech before we called it fintech.
Sure.
And so you have a lot of these banks that I served who are trying to say, listen, how do we reposition the customer at the center of everything? And having spent hundreds of hours helping them think through it, I started thinking, if I take that as an assumption, the customer is in the driver's seat of everything in the financial services space.
I don't have to repurpose it. I don't have to repurpose hundreds of years of work.
Correct. What does this mean about a world in 10 years from now when that's the starting point for most people's expectations? And you see the way that we get treated by the Amazons, Zappos, any of these kind of companies where we really do feel like it's built around our needs and we're in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Versus the way that many of us feel helpless when we interact with financial service companies, and they know that and they're trying to fix it. There's the insight that I have is that there are armies of well-intentioned, smart people in many of these financial service institutions. It is not because they're negligent to the tough customer. It is that there is a massive ship that is extremely profitable that needs to change in half degrees. And what we're trying to say is, well, what if we built a speedboat right in the right direction from the beginning? Right. Could we get that to work even better?
And to connect to that ship, to continue your metaphor, right?
Yeah.
So give us more on these financial institutions. And I usually what I'll do is I'll ask you to tell me, about this and when you were with this client. And I'm purposely taking you out of that so you don't have to share with us the brand names that you were with so that you can really tell us what's going on. As far as that ship moving half degree, give us a couple of examples of that. When you're going in, here's how they're changing. Yes, okay, fine. We see the letters that we get as, as clients of the bank. We see the commercials that they put on the air. But what really is going on in terms of those half degrees of change from your perspective?
Well, so first of all, I'm not allowed to even talk about who we served. It's actually
I don't. Yeah, exactly.
But there's a lot of efforts going on behind the scenes to make everything happen quicker, faster, better, so that the client experience is more seamless, less hassle, more hassle-free, et cetera. And to do that, just to think about what it takes to generate a notification letter for someone.
Right.
There's a lot of steps in the background that goes through. And sometimes that person could have just as easily received it by email. Yeah. They could have received it by text message.
Sure.
Being able to have somewhere in the hierarchy of the bank the ability to send a text message instead of a letter. Yeah. It actually takes a long time of not only a mental shift, but operational and technology to get them there. And these things help people. The ability to get a text message to say, hey, you're eligible for a credit limit increase or something like that, versus a letter can actually make someone act quicker, not deal with less stuff coming in the mailbox. There's a whole bunch of reasons why you might want it to happen. And that's some of the examples. But I think more broadly, the banks, the financial service institutions are filled with brilliant people. They see what expectations are. They're extremely aware of the kind of world that's emerging. Yeah. And so it's actually a question of prioritization. How do you keep this very important shift safe, stable, and running, but also start gravitating towards new assumptions around customer experience? Yeah. Things about the customer has one relationship with a financial institution, not 30.
How do you mean?
So, for example, you might have one financial institution that owns an insurance company, that owns a bank, that owns, it has a lending facility, and each one of those might treat you like their own client, and you're getting letters from each one. Yeah. Some of the banks that you'll see now, they've actually consolidated all those relationships into a one source of knowledge and truth for customers, right? And that's kind of the part of the assumptions that we work with. Yeah. We're saying there is one relationship for everything this customer is going to need. And that customer service representative will be empowered not only to make quick decisions on their behalf and to their benefit, but have the information they need to do that. When you're talking about large companies, sometimes that information is broken apart many different business departments. It's very tough to bring it together so that you can get good service.
So as far as dashboards are concerned, what dashboard are you giving me, the customer? What dashboard are you giving them, the financial institution, that kind of collates all of this information in a digestible way?
Right. So this is actually an interesting example. So when we were problem solving, what does good customer service look like in 2017?
Sure.
There are a few kind of statements that really speak to the customer. Things like, you know me, right? So it's, don't make me introduce myself and give all these different pieces of information that I've already given you and you can authenticate every time I call. Right. That idea of like an institutional memory of the relationship. But more importantly, be transparent. So the way that we're building out customer support is that you can look at your own records of all your customer service interactions, see how they were solved, what the fix was, where it was, and so on and so forth.
Well, let me stop you there.
Yeah.
Okay. Based on your experience, why have I not seen that before? And why are you now providing that to me? Because I immediately think of my relationship with my telecommunications with my cell phone carrier, right? Who I know has a treasure trove of customer data on me of when I call, right? So why haven't I seen that before as the customer? Why are you providing it to me now?
I think there are some institutions that are rolling these things out.
Okay.
I think it just depends on when a certain institution gets to it or not.
Okay.
The reason we are is because we have the benefit of not having 50 to 80 years of legacy, where we can say, what is the right answer now? Let's build that. Let's put that together. People are going to just get to it over time. But you see it. I mean, look at when you go to Amazon.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go and look at all your orders.
Yeah.
And you can see anytime you had to request some sort of a fix, you can go look at them. I mean, this is where, maybe Amazon's not, a year old, but
sure,
they act as if, where does the cutting edge force us to be for our customers?
And it's not the order history that I'm talking about. It's that customer interaction history.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's one thing. That's a dashboard piece. What else are you giving me, the customer, that I haven't really seen before?
So, I mean, the important thing for us is to make it easier for small business owners to just manage their company.
Sure.
Right? And amongst the many things that is, one is just remove financial management from their backs. Things like categorizing, their bookkeeping, expense management, all these things are things that you can actually help them with.
You're going to do that.
So we're doing parts of it.
How?
We're actually, there's a technology called APIs.
Sure.
It's a way for different systems to communicate, and the technology underlying the platform that we're building is a suite of APIs so that we can plug directly into your accounting software, your expense management software, your invoicing software, and these two systems can talk to each other. They don't need to be isolated and then someone else has to patch everything together.
Are you out QuickBooksing QuickBooks?
Well, we are actually trying to make QuickBooks shine.
There you go.
If there was ever an institution that can put the capabilities at their best, that's what we're trying to get. QuickBooks, Wave Accounting, whatever they might be, Xero Financial, all these things to do.
Speedboating it.
Speedboating, yeah.
All right. So fair enough. Okay, so I'm loving this. I'm seeing, obviously, order history, stuff like that, but certainly customer interaction history. You are making my QuickBooks shine, so as a small business owner, I'm loving that. And, of course, any CMO, any chief customer officer, any marketing executive listening to you is thinking, okay, these are great kind of new and different ways that I can interact with the customer that kind of bring my relationship to that customer with that customer to a new level. What else?
So I'll give you one other, but then I'll actually give you kind of more of a philosophical way that we
Perfect.
think about this. The other one for us is insights.
Yeah.
So help me drive my business forward. Help me understand, where am I from a cash position month over month? Is this a better season or worse season? What are the implications about this month? If I'm at this point now and my business is cyclical, should I be worried or not? A lot of small business owners find out way too late that they needed a working capital stopgap because of just the way the cash flows worked out this month. The ability to give them a few more days, maybe weeks, to get that together can actually be the difference between a business or not. And I think I've certainly seen statistics that show that over 80% of small business failures ultimately happen because of cash flow mismanagement, not necessarily because the business model didn't work and so on and so forth. But I think,
and to that end, again, no matter who's listening, it's all the time that you spend doing those things that you shouldn't be spending doing those things.
Right.
It's all those things that take up so much time that really aren't about what your relationship is with the customer.
Listen, if you're a mechanic, if you're a restaurateur, you make your money by making delicious meals or making cars safe and kind of easy to get back on the road. The time that you as an owner spend on getting the books done, running an Excel sheet to understand where you stand, the insight is important to drive the business, but the time spent does not create value. And so ultimately, the owner still is accountable for all this thing, but can you serve it up to them so they can just take it and run with it?
There you go.
Versus having to go and become the accountant, the financial expert, et cetera, themselves.
Can you serve it up to them so they can just take it and run with it?
Right, and the assumption there is the one source of truth for financial data is at the bank level.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't get transformed by another software program. It doesn't get possibly miscategorized in an Excel sheet. It's at its rawest, purest format, so that's the best place with which you can actually derive insight and meaning from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
so that's the insight piece.
Yeah.
And then you were going to give us the kind of grand philosophical...
So more broadly, I mean, so we've now done over 120 customer interviews. We've been hypothesis testing different parts of our value proposition, the platform, but also the business model itself. And an important principle for us is actually to try to create the least amount of work for the client to do business with us.
Sure.
And so what that means very tactically is instead of trying to rebuild the QuickBooks of the world, the Expensifys of the world ourselves, we say these people, it's good for a customer that there is a company who does nothing but think about expense reporting all day long.
Sure.
And that's actually to their benefit, but what we want to do is actually let all this talk to itself, so that the company has its own suite of products that it uses, and what we're saying is you don't have, if you like them, keep using them. We're going to connect everything together. The data is going to start talking through these APIs.
So those 120 customer interviews.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about every single one.
Sure.
We simply don't have the time, right? So what other kind of pieces of information did you receive from that kind of master list of interviews that we haven't discussed just yet?
So, I mean, one really important insight that was really interesting to us was that people fundamentally don't want a relationship with their bank.
Interesting.
You know, and you see a lot of banks messaging on this idea that you got a person there waiting for you to greet. A lot of people said, I kind of wanted to get out of the way, work like I expect you to, but when I have a problem, I need all the TLC I can get because you got to resolve that for me now. But
in between, I don't necessarily want touchy-feely.
Well, they say, like, why are you going to call me into a branch if nothing, just to sell me more, et cetera? But I don't. If
nothing's wrong, right, don't call me.
And so they that to me was fascinating. That
totally
overwhelmingly, people were saying, I need my bank to work.
Yeah.
I need my bank to do its job perfectly.
Right.
But I don't want to have a regular phone call asking me how I'm doing. I don't have time for that, and nor is it going to bring me anything. I'll let you know what I need.
Right.
You're going to eventually get into a space where sometimes you may be able to tell people what they don't know they need. Mm-hmm. But that's a different thing. I don't think that we're getting to that point yet in this.
In the next 2 years, as you say.
Yeah, in the next few years, yeah.
Okay, because you say it's your job to look at the next 2 years and nothing else.
I mean, listen, we got to be aware of where the 5 to 10 year is, but because we're early stage, we don't have the luxury of saying, how do I build for 5 years from now? I'm saying, how do I get something built now that is compatible with my view of the world as it is in 5 years?
Yeah.
We're mindful of it, but it's a very short-term. You got to think very short-term in terms of just product.
So, management consulting, how'd you get into that to begin with?
I had a wonderful mentor.
Yeah.
I worked. So my background originally, I did a JD MBA.
Okay.
And I worked in a law firm just long enough to know that law wasn't going to be for me.
How
but
come?
I loved the people. Sorry?
Why?
It was just the nature of the work.
Yeah.
I was just getting my spidey sense going off over the course of my summer, saying, this could be really, really frustrating given all the things you love doing. And I had a mentor, and he was a partner at a firm, and I asked him, I said, listen, this is what I'm feeling. What would you advise me? And I said, what I really want to do is open this law firm's offices. I want to go to a new city, poach clients, bring new lawyers on, and open a new office. And he just started laughing at me. He says, do you love contract work? I said, not really. He says, if you don't love it, you're going to be doing it for at least 10 years before you get the keys to an office that's existing, let alone one that's not there.
Right.
He goes, have you ever thought of management consulting? And I was like, I know about it, but that really made me refocus. And I was like a kid in a candy shop for many years there. It was wonderful.
Perfect. When you were a kid, though, what made you think that you wanted to be a lawyer to begin with?
Sorry, I can't hear.
When you were a kid, what made you think you wanted to be a lawyer to begin with?
No, as a kid, I wanted to be an archaeologist like MacGyver.
Okay, fair enough.
That was
very cool guy for anybody that saw the original MacGyver show.
Exactly.
So then how did you wind up getting the JD MBA then?
So I started out in science.
Okay.
kind of on the when you do well at something, just keep doing it.
Sure.
So I'd gotten good marks in science. I went in and I studied biochemistry and mathematics in the science in my science degree. But over time, I started realizing that I didn't want, how do you win at science in many ways? You can go do a PhD, a postdoc, etc. And that didn't speak to me. So I had a hypothesis was, well, I love the logic of science, but I care about the subject matter of the social sciences. Maybe law is like the right middle.
That's where maybe it meets.
Right. It wasn't at all.
I gotcha.
But nonetheless,
which is why it makes sense that you said once I finally got there, I kind of understood that I wasn't, because it didn't solve the problem you were looking for.
Right. But it took me in a great, I have no regrets as to where it sent me. I just wouldn't have predicted it based on why I went in. And
it does sound like this kind of current place is where you were going with all that. Right?
Yeah,
in a way.
What I love about this is that it reverse engineers from things I care about deeply.
Yeah.
It's, to me, the technology in the banking is secondary to what it's doing, which is empowering small business owners. And to me, that solves for a few important things. Reducing income inequality. A thriving small business class is one of the most important levers North Americans have to get there. It's a great way to let immigrants start over and start over effectively. And it's one of the biggest form of opportunity generation for minorities and women leaders who don't necessarily get those in larger corporations. So to me, all those things are things I care about. And this opportunity, this way of solving it is the way I believe that I could best move the needle towards those goals that I think are really important.
Plus, you get to drive a speedboat. Yeah. I've got 3 final questions for you. I'll tell you what they are. I'll ask you them in order. What has most surprised you at work? Mm-hmm. What has most surprised you in life? And then on the soundtrack of your life, one track, one song that's got to be on there. But first things first. Along the way here, what's most surprised you at work?
How important it is to have people around you that are smarter than you.
When did you realize that?
I took it for granted when I was at McKinsey, which is full of very smart people.
Sure.
When I started building a team and I saw how highly effective my colleagues were and the people we were hiring were, that's when I knew that they were putting rocket fuel on us and not, regular gasoline. And that was really, really insightful for me.
Almost. That's why now I get why people say that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
What's most surprised you in life?
How empowering having the right wife, in my case, has been to doing everything I want to do in life.
Here's to her, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Without her, where are you? Nowhere?
I'm just working way too much and not going out enough.
So she kind of balances you out there, right?
She pulls me back from the brink.
Yeah.
And she's ambitious and smart in her own right. So it's a good balance.
She knows where the line is, type of thing.
Yeah. She keeps me honest.
There we go. On the soundtrack of your life, one track, one song that's got to be on there.
Eye of the Tiger.
Yes. Here's to Rocky Balboa, my friend.
Relentlessness.
Indeed. And a little bit of tenaciousness.
Exactly.
You get both of those, you can go anywhere.
Absolutely.
And there you have Eytan Bensoussan. We're a client company, and everything else is a way to make the client's life better. If the customer's in the driver's seat of everything, what does that mean for the world 10 years from now? So really, a guy starting with the customer in mind. The whole thing is a customer experience company. Amazing. Thanks to him. Thanks to you. Stay tuned.